Hi everyone, and welcome to another flight deck sim tutorial. In today's video we'll be looking at the brand new PMDG UFT, or Universal Flight Tablet. Now this has been coined for release for the past almost year, I believe, but it's now finally been pushed by PMDG, and we're just going to have a look at its features, and I think what you guys would like to see is a comparison with the performance calculator that came with the update and the real OPT, and just see how the figures do compare. Right, let's jump into the cockpit and see what is what. So here we are in the cockpit of the PMDG 737, live time, live weather. We're simulating a fictitious flight between Faro in Portugal and Leeds Bradford in the United Kingdom. I've loaded up and set up the aircraft, it's all ready to go, and it's now a time to look at the OPT, or the UFT I should say. Now it looks really nice. The 3D model of the tablet, it sits very well in the cockpit. It's pretty much identical to where it sits in the real aircraft. In fact, a little oversized, I think, to an all iPad we use, but it does look pretty good here. The first we're going to look at is the electronic flight bag, which is here. I'm blagging my way through this video. Let's look at the flight details then. We'll request the data from SimBrief. You can see the first page here. The page can't load Google Maps correctly, so I think they need to put another coin in the meter. Request the data from SimBrief, and you can see here, here's Alpaca 01 routing from Faro to Leeds Bradford with the alternative Stansted. We've got all the information regarding the winds, our speeds, and our zero fuel weight as well. And you've got here the routing, which is now depicted here. I think if I select this, we can switch to the Navigraph map. There we are. So that's looking better. You can see the routing, which looks really nice in 3D. You can unlock your location to check your routing geographically and go to day if you so wish. And that's the Navigraph format. It works really well here in the tablet. You can also fetch the weather as well. So you can select departure to automatically generate the METAR here for Faro. If you don't know how to read a METAR, you can select simple and you have a simplified tab. You've got the arrival and the alternate as well. So that's really nice, and obviously you can track that along your routing as you fly along. Next we have the raw format of the flight plan. This is a SimBrief Lido operational flight plan, just like we have on my operator, so you can step through that in detail as you wish. You also have the weather charts down below, so that is very nice. The clarity is really good on the display too. Then you have your Navigraph charts, so you can select departure for Faro, arrival for Leeds Bradford, and the alternate Stansted here as well. For example, airport, you can select the required airport chart, and you appear as a little blue icon or airplane icon. You can press that to be a dot or nothing at all. You can also pin them too, so if you select a pin, you can go out of it, select pins, back to airport. You can see any pin charts in the relevant tab. This is what you get in a lot of high quality add-ons already. It's nice to finally see it in the PMDG 737. So there's the Navigraph chart implementation. Next you have your settings. So I've set them up as we have them here in Europe, and then you've got some information for the tablet as well. So that's everything from that feature as well. Let's have a look at the performance tool and see how it compares to the real Boeing OPT. Right, so I've adjusted the cameras slightly so I can bring the Boeing OPT to the right whilst we see the performance tool on the UFT to the left. So let's now select it. And you can see here it's automatically generated Faro, and you can import a lot of data to save you having to input it manually. So let's have a look at the takeoff performance. We'll import from the operational flight plan the relevant data, or not. I think I might have to select the runway first, or maybe it's done it already. Well, runway 28, there we are. We've got the elevation, the heading, the slope. It is flat here. The runway length, slight discrepancy between the actual length here, which is 2,490 meters, and we've got 2,407 here, but that's only a small discrepancy. It is currently dry here in Faro as well. Let's now import the aircraft information. So this is the actual aircraft weight as it is right now, 69,276. So we'll put that in here. The CG, I don't know if you can import. Oh, there we are. Excuse me. Import from the aircraft helps if you press that. So 69,621. The CG as well, 15.94%. The PAX will be on for departure as well, which is the default setting. We'll import the weather too. So we have 22 degrees, 250 at 12. QNH1020. So let's press calculate and see the figures here. So we this figure here, I'd really wish they'd had some more information available. They've just got the runway and the runway length here. They could have added, like the real OPT has, the accelerate stop distance, the takeoff distance available. All we have is the takeoff run available, the runway length as well. So hopefully that'll be added in the time in the future. But all the information we want here on the right hand side is what's important. So that's saying an acceleration height of 1500 feet. I think that's just the default PMDG acceleration height. In reality, we have something called an MFR8, which is the point at which we accelerate in the event of an engine failure, but at the moment it's just saying 1500 for the standard acceleration height. For two engines, flap 5, an N1 of 94.04 TO, so optimum here, it's a slightly different layout in our OPT, but this would be the optimal, then 26, 24 and 22k, so this is saying full 26k, 46 degrees, a trim of 6.24 units, so these are the V speeds, and your weight of 69,621. Now I'm going to punch these in the real OPT and see how they compare. So here we are from the real OPT with the exact weight and CG in as well. You can see the figures are actually not bad at all. I've selected the rating to 26k because my operator, we generally reduce the D rate first to 22, then assumed temperature, but some airlines do have a higher rating and a higher assumed temperature, which is what the Boeing PMDG tablet's done here. So it's showing in the real OPT 26k 51 degrees. This is showing 26k with 46 degrees. So to be fair, what's that, 5-degree discrepancy? Not bad at all. The N1 setting for departure, 94.04, we've got 92.7. So it's about 1.3% off by the time the bleed's on, a little less. So we're sort of in a couple of percent. Within the confines of a desktop simulator, it's not far off. There can be some slight discrepancies based off different OPT databases as well. So we're around the right range here. The trim as well isn't, again, that far off either. We've got 6.75% based off a CG of 15.94%. And the real OPT, this is showing 6.24. Again, that's half a unit of trim within the confines of Desktop Simulator. You're not going to notice that as well. The V-speeds as well are all within 1 knot. We've got 143 in the PMDGT tablet and 144 in the real one, 145 and 145 and 150 and 150. So yeah, I have to say the performance takeoff calculation is pretty accurate using just the data available here as well. And as we use this in live streams moving forward, we can compare perhaps more limiting factors such as runway length and runway condition to see how things are. Now let's have a look at the landing dispatch performance figures. So here's the landing dispatch in the UFT. Now what landing dispatch is? It's something we do prior to departure to ensure that we can land at our destination with the forecast weather conditions. And what this calculation does, it gives you a weight, and this is the maximum landing weight you can land at with max manual braking, flap 40, idle reverse if the runway isn't contaminated, and most of the time it's around the aircraft's maximum landing weight. So let's punch in all the figures here. So we've got Leeds, Bradford. So it'll be runway 14 today. The elevation looks good. The heading to the runway slope, it's actually slightly down slope on 14 by 0.1%. Again, I'll have to play around to see if this is actually fixed at 0, if it does vary. Runway length, the landing distance available is actually slightly less than this because of the displaced threshold, and the actual runway there right now is wet. Now, at my operator for dispatch landing, we always use flat 40, packs on anti-ice is off. Now, this is where there's some differences. You should have the option for reverse thrust and auto speed brake as well, because that will have a huge impact if the runway is contaminated. I don't know what the PMDG UFT is assuming. I should think maybe with reverse thrust. So we'll have a look at the figures anyway and see how they compare at the moment with just a wet runway. 10 degrees is the actual temperature. The surface wind is 230.11.982. Let's press calculate. So we have, I think, a landing distance here, which is probably the actual landing distance based off the conditions. The quick turnaround weight, again based off brake cooling. I think this is the actual landing dispatch maximum weight perhaps here. We have a VREF as well for flap 30 perhaps, not so sure. No VREF ice figure. And this figure here is the maximum weight you can land at based off your landing dispatch performance. And 66361 is the PMDG 737's maximum certified landing weight. At my operator it's slightly less, 65317, but if I bring up the Boeing OPT you can see here we've got 65317, which is my operator's maximum landing weight for the NG, and then we have the PMDG's maximum landing weight of 66361, which is what I'd expect landing at Leeds. Even on a wet runway we can still land the aircraft's maximum landing weight. Now let's have a look at if we change the runway condition, if we can see if there's any differences. So one of the settings I've found here is standing water. Now standing water is a contaminated runway. The thing is though, with the Boeing Universal Flight Tablet you have to select the contaminant, whilst in reality since TALPA was replaced from GRF calculating, we have to actually in reality select a braking action. Now standing water, you usually have to enter a depth, and the minimum depth is 3 millimeters, which I've done in the real OPT, and that gives you a braking condition of medium to poor. Now if I press calculate on this, it's exactly the same figure. It says we can still land at the maximum landing weight. Now if you look at the real OPT, if I put then that figure, and because it's contaminated I can take reverse credit at the dispatch phase, actual maximum landing weight is 49,803 kilos. So I don't know if there's an issue with my particular build, but it certainly seems changing runway condition has no impact on your maximum landing weight, whereas in reality it has a significant impact on your dispatch landing performance. Let's see if we can see or see if I can at all change this dispatch landing weight figure. Now unbelievably I've now updated the runway condition to wet ice, which is actually prohibited to land on in reality, but even with wet ice, again it leads Bradford wet ice, like landing on a skate rink. If I press calculate, it's still saying 66361. However, what I've found is if I now add a 10 knot tailwind, if I put in something like 320 at 10 knots for runway 14 and press calculate, I've managed to reduce it slightly, but I can guarantee you if you were to land or calculate this in the real OPT, it wouldn't accept it. This is wet ice, a 10 knot tailwind on a 2,000 meter runway, and that's saying, well, yes, you can land with a weight of 59,627. Out of curiosity, just in the real OPT, if I select the same settings, medium to poor, the worst you can select with a 10 knot tailwind, it just simply comes up with a calculation with an alert saying you can't do it, you have insufficient runway length, and the actual weight is below the minimum user weight of the aircraft, so even empty you couldn't land here. So this landing dispatch seems to work for sort of dry and wet runways, but contaminated runways seems to be well off the mark. So I did a little bit more experimenting. It would seem the runway contamination actually makes no difference on the actual dispatch landing weight, so I think they've just not calculated it at all. If I select compacted snow, exactly the same. If I select wet, it's exactly the same. If I select dry, here we then go back up to the 66361. So they might as well have just included dry and wet, because the different contaminations have no impact on your dispatch landing weight with the UFT, whereas in reality it has a huge impact. So if I select wet though with a 10 knot tailwind, you can actually see now this dispatch landing weight, if I recalculate, of 59,687 is actually close to what the real OPT says here. So maybe for just dry and wet runways the figures are accurate, but certainly not for contaminated runways. So here's the landing en route page of the UFT. I've filled out all the data based off the actual weather conditions as well. I've updated the actual landing weight from the operational flight plan, expected to be around 62.3. With flap 40, packs on, engine and wing anti-ice on as well, because it's 10 degrees there. Reverse thrust credit will take. Order brake 3, hopefully, and there'll be an update with the ability to have all the order brake settings instead of just selecting one here. The real OPT shows you all of them. No non-normal situations. Look, they've got the list here of all the non-normal situations which increase landing distance, which is great to see. VREF addition +5 based off the weather conditions. So let's press calculate, and here's the figures. Landing weight 623, final approach speed of 143 knots. We need 1665 meters. We have 2156. Let's just see what the real OPT says. Well, checking the performance figures in the real OPT, we come to a bit of an issue. It says if we use order brake 3, the actual distance is 2,116 metres. We're going to run off the end of the runway it leads. Do not worry, the PMDG is probably unfactored with its distance. Our OPTs, we increase the distance by 1.15. So if I take the OPT figure, or the UFT figure, from the PMDG tablet and add or times that by 1.15, you can see the distance is 14 meters in comparison to 2116. So it is around 200 meters short still. So again, there could be some slight discrepancies between our OPT and the real OPT. Ballpark, it's sort of within 90% of the correct distance. Again, there's a few variable changes. There's slope here is presumed to be 0%. In reality, there's a very slight downslope, which will increase the performance distance. But it's in the right ballpark figure as well. Just one thing I wanted to point out, I'm not sure what they're using for the runway length calculation. It's showing 2,250. The landing distance available is actually considerably less in lead. It's only 1,801 metres on 1.4 because of the displaced threshold. So hopefully in time that will be updated to take into account the length of any threshold that might be affecting the landing distance in the OPT. Right, that's the end of my little first look and impression of the PMDG Universal Flight Tablet. I hope you found that interesting and maybe learned something new. Now, pushing aside the fact that this took an awful long time for PMDG to update, in fact it became a bit of a meme amongst the flight sim community, I actually really do like the update. Great foundation to build on. Positives are the electronic flight bag really nicely brings in SimBrief and Navigraph integration, which the majority of commercial flight sim users use, and the performance tool as well. It's not exactly the same as our OPT, but it's certainly close enough, and within the confines of a desktop simulator like Microsoft Flight Simulator, you are going to get accurate enough ballpark figures for your takeoff and landing performance, and I'm sure in time those performance calculations will be refined to be a little bit more accurate. Again, as we mentioned, landing dispatch performance, when you change to different contaminated runways, don't seem to be affecting your dispatch landing weight on landing. So again, hopefully that will be addressed moving forward as well. Just a side note, and as well, just a personal preference, why on earth haven't PMDG moved all of the information from their FMS, for example the menu settings and FS actions, for fuel and payload? It's so cumbersome for me personally to have to go into this FMC to open and close doors, adjust the fuel, adjust the payload. At least with GSX you can do that in that situation, but for other users they're going to have to continue to use the FMC. Now, someone did say to me, well, in the real EFB you don't have that option as well. Well, in the real FMC it's not also how you adjust your fuel and payload and open your doors either. So hopefully in time they'll actually update the FMC, because it is still about 15 years old. So it's just an FMC, and we'll have all those features added to the tablet. That was something I was really hoping to have once they'd updated this with the latest UFT update. Anyway, a little unusual to my usual videos, but a lot of people have been asking me to preview the tablet, and I hope, as I said earlier, you found it interesting and learned something new. If you'd like to stay up to date with the latest content, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to like the video as well. Helps out the channel an awful lot. Take care wherever you are, and I'll see you on another live stream or video very soon. Bye for now.